I know for a lot of you it's spring break this week or that it's spring break next week, and so I'm really going to tick you off by bringing up this next subject, and it's testing. Testing, because when you come back from spring break, we all know that there's going to be a certain amount of testing that's going to happen in the classroom. It's just part of the school year. And we could spend 3 shows talking about why and whether it's worth it for testing. We could do that, right? But I'd rather focus today on what to do to get our kids the most prepared for the testing that they have to do. And it's not one size fits all, surprise, like everything else having to do with autism. But there are some things that are guidelines that of course make sense for all kids. And you'll notice that the school will start sending home notices saying, we're going to be testing on these days, and it's really important that your child get rest and that they have a proper breakfast and that they get proper nutrition, maybe that they have a snack that they can bring with them to school. And I think that that's a really good place to start for all kids. That if you're going to take a test, you know that you want to be at your absolute physical best. You want to feel your best. You want to feel well rested. And for our kids, it's something that's a little out of the norm. Now, excuse me, in all likelihood, they'll do some practice testing so that it won't be this really harsh thing that comes out of nowhere, even for our kids. But even then, you know, they don't spend, it's a different kind of a day. Now most of the testing is done on computers. So maybe they're going to a different room. So there are some things that are out of the ordinary. So we want to stack the deck with as many coping mechanisms as we possibly can for our kiddos, and getting a good night's sleep and having the proper nutrition so that they're not feeling all wonky on the inside. It's just a given, right? So I would encourage you, I know it's spring break and I'm having a hard time getting my kid to go to bed at a reasonable time because it's spring break, right? And it's spring break for us too. And I love the days when I could just stay up as late as I wanted to and there were no repercussions. But this isn't the time. It isn't spring break. So as much as you possibly can, keep the schedule the same so that you're not having to battle that on top of everything else. In fact, even though it's harder because it's lighter later, if you can kind of move the dial back a little bit and get them to bed earlier for this next month, you'll find that the testing goes better. Now, we have to stop for a second because I can feel you saying, why should I care how my kid does on the testing? Because my child has autism and this may or may not apply and the testing may or not make sense. Yeah, that's possible. But I know that over 50% of our kids that are on the autism spectrum, if they have really good appropriate testing, a lot of them test with above average IQs. So that's 50% of the kids right there. And I know, and I feel very strongly from talking to other parents and talking to teachers, that when our kids test well and do well on those testing, the standardized tests, you will get access to better things. Let's say this, that for instance, your child maybe doesn't do well with a certain teacher, right? And is struggling with a subject matter, but they do well on the test. That gives you ammunition to go into the IEP and say, no, my child can do this work, so we have to try a different teaching method. And they really can't poo-poo you because you've got the test scores to show it, right? And then they gave the test, so they can't, you see what I'm saying? It becomes something in your arsenal. Now let's say that you're somebody who's on the other side of this, where your child doesn't have the above average intelligence. In fact, your child has a diagnosed intellectual disability and you feel like it's just torture for them. First of all, I want to remind you that you do have the right to opt out of the test. If you feel like your child is not going to do well on the test and that it's going to be stressful for them, please feel free in your IEP process to say, nope, we're opting out of the standardized testing, or to request extra accommodations that will help your child to do better. You can have things like unlimited time. You can have a quiet classroom. You can have somebody who reads the instructions or reads the questions to your child. You can have, look in your IEP, there's a bunch of places where they can check for the standardized testing to have more support. So please feel free to do that. But for the kiddos that are able to take the test, but are struggling a little bit with the test, we want to front load them so that they don't have to be anxious, and let them know that there's a treat for taking the test, that there's no bad repercussions from taking these tests. If you can build that into a very young child, it will serve them well throughout their life. You just do the best you can and you get a reward, whatever it is. And you will find that for kids that do take the test and maybe don't do well on it, it also has the ability, when you go into the IEP, to be something that's in your arsenal, that you can say, look, we see that they're significantly behind in English, so can we get some more support for that? Is there a class that they can go to where they have more one-on-one support? Can we get an aide in there? It becomes a way for you to negotiate more services. So it can be super beneficial for the process that you are on for your child. And if you feel strongly that it's not, you would not be alone, and feel free to opt out of it. But that's something you got to do beforehand. They won't do it the day of the testing. So getting our kids well rested, making sure that they get some practice taking the test, that they understand that they just have to do their best and that there is no failing these tests. You just do the very best you can, and if you do, you get a reward, right? Build something in that's fun in the afternoon after they do testing, that's the reward for simply having taken the test. That's for all of our kids across the board. And if you feel like it's too much for a student, absolutely opt out. Or if they need accommodations, make sure that you've negotiated that well in advance. It can be a really good thing for our kids in the classroom to take a test and to feel like that they did a good job, but it's not necessarily for everyone.